Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers reporter for Buha's Block. I'm still getting used to that one. Big day in Lakerland, wild day in Lakerland, which is setting up for an interesting summer. We had multiple developments today and seemingly multiple potential developments here in the coming hours, days, weeks. So a lot to unpack. I have 7 pages of notes here that I want to lay out for you guys, my thoughts about the situation in some of the conversations I've had in the previous few hours, as well as some of the thoughts I already had, and just wanted to organize it and go through my read on this situation. So first, the 4 things that happened today for the Lakers. 1, LeBron James opted in to his $52.6 million player option for next season. No surprise there. That is in line with what had been out there. I talked about that over the last couple of months, that was the way that this was trending. That was the most likely thing that was going to happen. And I said that those who thought LeBron was going to take a pay cut, we could debate if he should have taken a pay cut to maximize this roster, but it was never really in play. And that's what we reported when I was at The Athletic. And that is how this played out. Then Dorian Finney-Smith declined his $15.4 million player option and will test free agency. And he has multiple suitors out there that are willing to offer him the full taxpayer mid-level exception. And depending on what happens in Detroit and how they navigate their cap space and their cap sheet, could potentially get some cap space money from a team like a Detroit. So DFS is, I think that's been the most troubling development over the last few days. Has been, it started to look like posturing with DFS and just trying to get more years or more money out of the Lakers. And now that he's going to be a free agent, that there's a real possibility that he ends up leaving. And then a couple smaller things. Jordan Goodwin, the Lakers picked up his $2.3 million team option, which I think was the correct move. Jordan Goodwin on a $2.3 million deal is a steal. That's a below average vet minimum contract. So, I think a shrewd move by the Lakers, and I think only 25%, not 25%, 25,000 of it is guaranteed technically until I believe like January 20th, something like that. Then the Lakers extended a qualifying offer to Christian Koloko to make him a restricted free agent. So the way that restricted free agency typically works, teams are scared off. They don't want to tie their exceptions or their money into a player when a team will often just match it. So it's looking like Christian Koloko is going to be in the Lakers' control, and whether they want to put him on the 15-man roster or how that goes remains to be seen. But I think he makes a lot of sense as a potential third center with some upside, particularly on the defensive end, but also as a roller rim runner type. Checks a lot of the boxes that the Lakers need from the starting center spot, albeit in a more younger, more inexperienced player. So let's get into LeBron. That's the big thing of today. So he did not just opt in to the player option. He released a statement through Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul to both ESPN and The Athletic. I don't know if there was any other outlets that he released it to. It was the same statement to both outlets, but I have it here. I want to read this first, and then we will unpack it a bit. So, quote, LeBron wants to compete for a championship, Paul told ESPN. I don't know why I can't speak right now. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. We are very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeannie and Rob, and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that, are supportive, and want what's best for him. End quote. A lot to unpack just within those 2 paragraphs, right? I think one thing that immediately jumps out to me is that the partnership we've had for 8 years and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career, it almost sounds past tense in a way that is a bit jarring. And then there's like reading into the quote, like, are they suggesting he's going to ask out if he's not happy with the roster? Are they suggesting he's only playing one more year? And that's the part I want to get into. So what does this mean for LeBron? And I see one of three things here. So one, I see this as them, one of three options. One potential option is LeBron and Clutch are saying, if the Lakers don't improve this roster, and it's going to require trades, they're not improving this roster and becoming a true blue contender by signing Brook Lopez or Clint Capella and retaining the FS and just running it back with predominantly the same group. They're going to have to make some trades. I've been saying this for a while now. Like, for the Lakers to actually become a contender, they have to make at least one trade, if not two, maybe even three. So if LeBron, essentially if they let DFS walk, they sign a over-the-hill center, and they don't make a trade or two, does LeBron ask out, right? I think that's the way that they're positioning this based on the statement. That's one potential option. So if the Lakers do not upgrade the roster enough to LeBron's liking, he potentially asks out. Option two is LeBron knows he's only going to play one more year. He hasn't publicly announced it yet. And again, this is a hypothetical scenario, and he is trying to put more pressure on the Lakers because he doesn't want to leave. He wants to play his final year in LA, but he knows it's going to be his final year. So he wants them to maximize that final year, and he's trying to put pressure on them that way. And then the third way could be technically both, where he's only playing one more year, but he hasn't announced that yet. And if they don't upgrade the roster enough, he's also going to ask out. So that could be kind of splitting or a combination rather of option one and two. And then I guess there is a less likely option that he's positioning this to potentially leave in 2026 when his contract's up, and there will be more teams with actual cap space. Because right now, if he declined his option and wanted out, he could go to Brooklyn, but Brooklyn's not winning anything anytime soon. So that one I see a little bit less likely. I see it more as he knows he only has 1 year left or maybe 2 years left, and he's trying to really put pressure that way. And or he's saying, he's being upfront, he's setting the terms, he's setting the expectations that if you guys don't upgrade this roster to my liking and to where I view this as a contender, then I'm out. A couple of things to note with LeBron. He has a no trade clause. So LeBron has the ultimate control here. Like, the Lakers don't have to acquiesce and give him a trade, or like if he demands out, asks out, they don't have to honor that. But they are in the business of treating stars with a certain respect and a certain show of loyalty. I think LeBron has held up his end of the bargain. He's been there for 7 years. I don't know why they said 8, because he came in 2018, but 7 years, and he won a championship. And I think that he has done more than, like, if he stays one more year, it's going to be 8. And that's the longest he's been in any stretch of his career consecutively. So he's like, he can put pressure on the Lakers publicly. Then it's up to them whether they want to play ball with that, or how ugly or messy this potentially gets. As for where could LeBron go, I think it's a little bit too early for that. I don't think we're at the point of him asking out, but if he does, I assume there will be a list. And in terms of in terms of teams that would make sense, I came up with 4: Dallas, Cleveland, New York, and Golden State, in no particular order. But I will say that there's been some LeBron and Dallas buzz going on a couple of years now. Remember in the summer of 2023, right after Dallas had traded for Kyrie, there was that rumor out there that LeBron was going to go to Dallas on a vet minimum contract and team up with Draymond, and it was going to be Luka, Kyrie, LeBron, and Draymond. And that, of course, did not happen. But there has been some buzz, I will say, in the general NBA ether over the last week or two with LeBron and Dallas. And if you just look at the situation, they have AD, they have Kyrie, they have Jason Kidd, who LeBron played with in with Team USA, and then also played under with the Lakers. Kid was an assistant on that 2020 title team, and LeBron loved being coached by him. They also have Nico Harrison, which, as funny as that is to sub, he is a former Nike guy, and LeBron is Mr. Nike. So I think LeBron is going to stay in LA. I think that's the way this ultimately plays out. And I mean, we've done this song and dance before with him before, right? And we've seen him apply pressure through the media, through statements. This does feel a little bit different than that, but I think he stays. But if he does ask out, if it gets to that point, if the disaster scenario for the Lakers plays out where DFS leaves, they strike out in free agency in terms of an impact player, they don't make a trade or two, and LeBron is unhappy with the roster and wants out, I would say keep an eye on Dallas. That's all I'm going to say. With that, I think that's a team that would be on his list and in play. So in terms of how the Lakers move from here with this situation, I see this as pressure on them from LeBron and Clutch to trade the first, trade Dalton Connect, trade the expirings and the swaps, and to upgrade this roster. And again, I've talked about it before. The Lakers have multiple assets, 2031 or 2032 first round pick. They also have Dalton Connect. They have multiple expirings, Rui, Gabe, Maxi Kleba, and they have multiple swaps. So I view this as them saying, put all that stuff on the table, go get the best player or two you can get with those assets. And if you go do that, we're happy or at least content for now. We'll go try to win a championship with that group. If you don't do that, then again, potentially a trade demand, asking out, whatever. And again, I think it's probably got to be two trades. I don't really see one trade that addresses everything that the Lakers need, because they need a starting center, they need a starting wing, and they need more depth. And if you lose DFS on top of all that, that complicates things even further. And speaking of DFS, let's get into him. So what about DFS, and what does this mean? My understanding right now of years and how long this contract is potentially going to be with the Lakers. And I think the Lakers are willing to give him a 4-year deal around that non-taxpayer MLE range, then I think he stays. And I don't know, I mean, maybe they could offer the longer contract but with a little bit less money, but he has some leverage here. They traded 3 second-round picks and D'Angelo Russell to get him. He is the type of player they've been looking for years. So I think there is some leverage on the DFS side. And if DFS is a free agent, which he's going to be, there are going to be multiple teams that are coming with multi-year non-taxpayer MLE offers. So he could get 342, 456, something like that from teams out there. So the Lakers, I think, have to come correct with their offer and especially the years. And I get, for a 32-year-old, you might not want to offer the 4th year, but based on the circumstances and how they are right now, I'm of the mindset that you just offer him the 4th year and then you figure it out when you have to figure it out. Because if DFS walks, and that's the second part of this, like, they just don't have a lot of great options. So if he does walk, they will have the 14.1 non-taxpayer MLE available to them, which right now they're projected to have the 5.7 taxpayer MLE. So they get the better resource in free agency. The issue is I only see one player who I think would be worth it and potentially an upgrade, or at least close to even with DFS. And I would say arguably an upgrade, especially because of his age, in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The issue is right now, Atlanta and Detroit are gearing up to make offers for Nickeil Alexander-Walker that are greater than the non-taxpayer MLE. So the Lakers will be outbid. And especially, I think Detroit can clear up to like 24, 25 million in cap space. If Detroit comes with a $20 million, $22 million, $24 million offer for Na, I just don't see him turning down that much money to go play for the Lakers in his prime years. So I think Na is looking less likely than it might have, or than he might have a couple days ago before there was more clarity on his options out there. And if Na's not available, I just don't see, look, I'm a big Bruce Brown guy. You guys know that. I've advocated for the Lakers trading for him in the past when they've had previous interest in him. And he's on a different level right now than a Na. I think he's on a different level than a DFS. And then we could go the center route, but Brook Lopez, Clint Capella, maybe splitting it with Clint Capella and another player. I still think that's a downgrade compared to like if it's Clint Capella and Gary Payton II, or even Clint Capella and Bruce Brown. I'd rather, if I'm the Lakers, I'd rather have Clint Capella and Dorian Finney-Smith and use that 5.7 taxpayer MLE on Clint Capella. So I just think like DFS, I mean, LeBron is its own thing and that'll be played out, I think, within the next few weeks or so. DFS is the thing that he could be on a different team by tomorrow, and that puts the Lakers in a really difficult position. The other thing to note with DFS potentially walking, and if the Lakers use that taxpayer MLE, the full non-taxpayer MLE, is that they would be hard capped at the first apron of 195.9 million. And as things stand, the Lakers have 10 players on their roster. The league minimum is 14. And they're at $173.2 million. So they're about $22.7 million under the first apron, which means if they use the maximum of the 14.1 for next season, they would have about $8.6 million to spend on 3 more players, which if you look at even the basic vet minimums, they're pushing up against that first apron and might have to do a cost-cutting move. That's not even factoring in Shake Milton's salary here. So they'd have to waive Shake Milton or not pick up his guarantee by his guarantee date of, I believe it's July 20th. But like they're right up there against the first apron. So like I'm just gonna say I there's always a way to things can sometimes break right for the Lakers, right? So I don't want to say like doom and gloom or disaster scenario. I don't think we're there yet. But if DFS walks and they don't sign Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think they're in a really tough spot in terms of replacing that production, replacing that. There's also a ripple effect of now you might not want to trade Rui. It might not make sense to trade Rui. And if you don't trade Rui, that's $18 million in expiring salary that you're removing from your potential trade asset pool. So now all of a sudden, are you committing to him still being the starting wing? And now I think there's some limitations there with your starting group defensively and just your perimeter defense. So there are potential ripple effects here that I think are concerning, to say the least. And I think the Lakers have to handle this DFS situation and just resolve it. And again, if that means giving him a little bit extra money, an extra year, he's got some leverage right now. And I know in general, you want to be judicious with the years and the money, but there's also the Luka factor, which I haven't even gotten into yet with this. So what does this all mean? I think there's a lot of pressure on ownership and the front office in the next few days to, number one, retain DFS. Number two, figure out a worthy plan B if he leaves. And as of right now, I don't see a worthy plan B outside of Nickeil Alexander-Walker taking a discount. And then number three, upgrade the roster via trade or trades. And that is going to require putting draft capital and Dalton Connect on the table. And if they're not willing to do that because they're thinking about the future, that's okay. That they can pick that path. But there are going to be consequences. And the consequences might be DFS walking, LeBron ultimately asking out, and that not being the best sales pitch to Luka Doncic with August 2nd looming. There's a lot of plates spinning right now for the front office. Again, they're got this LeBron situation that just popped up. They got DFS and trying to figure that situation out. They got to figure out, are they going to have the 5.7 or the 14.1, taxpayer exception? What are they doing with trades? What are they doing with vet minimums? How are they managing the back end of the roster? Like, there's a lot for the Lakers to figure out right now. I still think LeBron remains a Laker next season. If I had to bet, if I had to make a prediction, I think he's a Laker. DFS, I'm less certain about. That's been one that's been trending in the wrong direction. And again, I think that's a pretty costly loss if they end up losing DFS. I still would lean more toward him remaining a Laker because they can outbid most of the competition, especially if they use I forget if he has non-bird rights or bird rights or early bird rights, what his bird rights situation is, but they can outbid the non-taxpayer MLE offers. So unless a Detroit misses out on Na and swoops in and offers him like $18-20 million a year, I think the Lakers can give a competitive offer there. But I think they're going to have to figure the DFS situation out. I think they're going to have to make a trade or two. Doesn't have to be in the next few days, but certainly within the next 2-3 weeks to calm some of the noise right now. And then the most important thing of all is looming over all this is Luka Doncic's extension on August 2nd. He can sign a 4-year, $229 million extension, or more realistically, I think a 3-year, $165 million extension, which would allow him to opt out in 2028 after his 10th season and sign a 35% max, recoup some of the money that he lost by being traded from Dallas. But again, as I just stated, they lose DFS and they don't make a notable trade or trades, and they just sign a plotting, aging center in the form of a Brook Lopez, a Clint Capella, and Al Horford, and then LeBron asks out. You really have to wonder if that's like, what message is that sending to Luka Doncic? What does that look like for Luka Doncic? I think there's a lot of pressure on the Lakers to figure this out, because it's not just about appeasing LeBron or maximizing next season. It's about, what does Luka want? And Luka's in win now mode. Everything that's come out of what Luka wants is to win championships, to compete for championships, and to get back to where he was in 2024. And I think he's holding up his end of the bargain right now. We've seen the reports, we've seen the photos. He's looking great. He looks like he's lost weight. He looks like he's in great shape. The Lakers, I think, have to hold up their end of the bargain. And it's not, if it's just signing Clint Capella, I don't think that's enough to, like, unless Luka is just committed and is okay with having a bit of a gap year or down year or just not a true contention year. That's a different story. I don't think we have clarity on that yet. But the Lakers, I think, have to be more aggressive than they've been. And they have not made a player-centric trade in the offseason since August 2022. It's been almost 3 years. I think that has to change, and probably has to change in a big way this summer. And I know they like having a first-round pick going into the season. I think that's got to change. Like, I think they need to be more aggressive in a way that they have not often been. I think they're aggressive in talks always, but actually executing is the key here. So I think, just it has to be a decision of, are they going all in or largely in on next season? Or if not, if they want to keep the cap sheet clean, if they want to keep that cap flexibility, if they want to prioritize 2026 and figuring out the next iteration of this roster, that's okay. But they better make sure Luka's on board with that. And there's potential consequences with LeBron, and that situation may be getting a little messy. So a lot will be determined in the coming hours, days, weeks. As I said at the top, this promises to be a fascinating offseason for the Lakers, as always. But let's get into the Q&A here. And I know, by the way, this Colin Sexton trade, it's got to be the precursor to something. I don't get why Utah would trade for Yusuf Nurkic. It just doesn't make any sense. But let's get into the Q&A. Young Claire, thank you for the super chat. What do you think happens on the trade front? It's a good question. It's been quiet. There was some Wiggins buzz a few days ago, but I've heard the asking price for Miami was pretty high. We're talking basically everything or close to everything that the Lakers could offer from like a top end asset standpoint. So I don't think that is going to happen. I don't think the Lakers are trading Rui a first and Dalton for Andrew Wiggins. That's not fair. It's not fair value. That's not a realistic trade. So I think Miami's playing hardball, and we'll see if they soften their stance and if it's just more a game of chicken or posturing or whatever. I think the big thing is going to be what happens with DFS. I think that's the first domino here, unless the Lakers pull out a trade within the next 24 hours or so, just because if they lose DFS, now all of a sudden there is a greater need for a wing. And I don't want to say you give up on trading for a center or prioritizing a center, but you could argue a wing defender and perimeter defense becomes just as big of a need. Like, of course, they need, like, they're going to have a new starting center. So I'm not like, if it's not going to be Jackson Hayes and Christian Koloko and Alex Len, right? So they're going to have a new starting center, whether that's the 5.7, the 14.1, or a trade. Like, I am confident they're going to find a starting center. Whether that's the right starting center is a different topic entirely. But I think it's too early to tell how the trade front shakes out, because now there's this variable with DFS that is going to, like, I think if he walks, you have to now prioritize getting a wing. You just have to. And again, that could be in free agency, but I just don't look at the list and show me the guy that really is going to move the needle, because I don't see him. Again, other than Na, who I would like as a potential starter for LA. He's a little bit smaller than I'd like as that fifth starter spot, but I think he'd fit well. Dipsy Doo, thank you for the super chat. Jazz trading for Nurkic. Kessler trade pending. Can you also get LBJ to Cavs trades? Has to be the one team. I tried on Spot Track and it's tough. So, I mean, if you're trading Kessler, if you're trading Nurkic to replace Kessler, Yusuf Nurkic to me is like a middling backup center, so I don't view him as a replacement for Kessler. I don't think that necessarily means that. I think if I'm not, let me pull up. Sexton had he had one more year left, multiple years left. Let me quickly check if this is like a salary dump. He's expiring. And Nurkic, sorry, this trade broke right before I went live, so I'm trying to, I mean, they're actually taking on like $400,000. Both are expirings. I don't get the trade yet. I do think it's the precursor to something else. I don't know what that something else is. It's weird. Like on paper, Colin Sexton is a much better player than Yusuf Nurkic. Not even on paper. I mean, in reality, he's a better player. And they attached seconds. So I don't really see, I mean, maybe a Kessler trade is coming, but I'm skeptical. We'll see. In terms of LeBron to Cleveland, the issue is Cleveland is a second apron team, so they're restricted in terms of the salary matching process. So if it is Cleveland, it would probably have to be a 3-team trade. They might have to send out some salary before they can do the deal. It gets pretty tricky. I think the one that actually is the cleanest is Dallas, and there's a way to get there. I've played with the trade machine with the base of Daniel Gafford, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington. That fourth guy could be Max Christie. I think the Lakers would love that. But it could be Najee Marshall, could be Caleb Martin. There's a lot of, like, they're not trading Flag, they're not trading Lively, they're not trading AD, they're not trading Kyrie. Everyone else is on the table. So there's a way to do that. Maybe you throw in a pick, just to maybe send the Lakers pick back, or even Dallas's 2026 pick, just to kind of save face. I don't think you're going to get this motherload return for LeBron just because he only has 1 to 2 years left and he's about to be 41 in year 23. It's just, I mean, again, I could be wrong, but I would be hard pressed to see a team giving up a like young star and like multiple picks for him just because of the age and the circumstances. It has nothing to do with how good LeBron is. If we're just judging based on how good he is, he's still a top 10 player and should get a motherload offer. But I mean, and again, maybe someone does make a motherload offer. I just think if you look at it objectively, he's probably got 1 to 2 years left. He's at an unprecedented phase of his career in terms of years played, miles, minutes, all that stuff. It's just, if you're a shrewd front office, you would leverage that against the Lakers and extract or reduce the price. Jay Hoodie, thank you for the super chat. I see fans talk about Braun is selfish for not taking a pay cut, but realistically, what players out there takes them over the top? Braun shouldn't have to take less for the front office mistakes. Well, the one thing I've said too with this is, like, he was going to have to take a $15 to $20 million pay cut for them to have access to the 14.1 non-taxpayer MLE. And as I just laid out before, other than Na, I don't really see a true difference maker in that range, like to to the extent of LeBron, to the extent of it being worth LeBron taking a pay cut. So it's easy for me to sit here, for you guys to sit there or wherever you are right now and say, take $15-20 million less, this guy's worth over $1 billion. He's made plenty of money in his career, yada, yada. That's just, I think that's like not realistic. It's short-sighted. And I think if we're being honest, and I know LeBron like praised the partnership, but I think there's a part of him that looks at it like, why should I have faith in this front office or this ownership group to figure out how to put the right pieces together, when you could argue since 2021, like they have not done a great job doing that. And they've had multiple, I think depth has been a big issue. They've lost a lot on the margins. They've had many early exits, including not making the playoffs once. And some of that's been injury circumstance, the Russ trade, Luka trade changed things, right? But even then they lost in the first round after that. So I think if you're him, you also have to think about like, they could have this quote saying it's been a great partnership and this and that. I think it has been a great partnership on both sides ultimately, but like, if, I know a lot of people have been upset with the front office, criticizing the front office. I think we would be naive to not assume LeBron feels the same way in some regards, maybe not as strongly, but I think if you were in a job situation and you maybe didn't have the most confidence in your management situation, are you going to take a pay cut to hope that they're going to figure out a situation that could maybe benefit you when they haven't been able to do it really the last few years? Like, I think that's a real thing. So I get it. We've talked, I've covered the LeBron pay cut thing before. That's something that I don't really have interest in talking about because I think however you feel about it is how you feel about it. There's no right or wrong answer necessarily. It's just, it's easy to say, take a $15 to $20 million pay cut. It's harder to actually do that. And especially if it's him losing $20 million for him to sign Brook Lopez instead of signing Clint Capella, like, is that worth it? Is that making a big enough difference? I don't think so. And if anything, them also using that also hard caps them at the first apron, which in some ways you could argue is a little more damaging because that limits their flexibility in between the first and second apron, which changes the salary options there for the rest of the roster. So I think you could even argue them using that exception. There's some clear downside to that as well. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. LeBron and Bronny to New York for OG, Robinson, and McBride. Works, and both teams get exactly what they need. Fire trade thoughts make sense all around. This has been, I think, just spitballing with people, like what trades could make sense, what trades work in the trade machine. This is one that has come up along these lines with OG and Robinson as the base. I think one interesting thing with New York, I had them on my list to just recap it. I had Dallas, Cleveland, New York, and Golden State. One thing with New York, though, is LeBron had the chance to go there in 2010. I'm sure in 2014 or 2018, if he really wanted to go there, he could have forced his way there. That would have found a way to make it work. He has not chosen to go to New York for whatever reason. He does love Madison Square Garden and the Mecca and all that. It would be an interest, like LeBron, Cat, Brunson. It's a pretty good trio, especially in the East. And you also have to wonder, if you're the Lakers, would you rather have Cat just straight up, and then you actually have to add in salary to make it work? I probably would rather have OG, Robinson, and McBride, to be honest, just because if you're going in with Cat and his salary, you're really committing to Cat, Luka, and Austin. I don't know if you're getting off that, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I'll say, like, I think this is more in line with what I think is a realistic deal in a potential LeBron trade, where, again, I don't see them getting like a young all-star and like multiple picks. Like the one that would be interesting, of course, is Cleveland if they could get Jared Allen. There is a scenario in which they could get a Jared Allen and a Darius Garland, but again, it gets complicated with the second apron and the maneuvering under that. Cleveland would probably have to reroute some salary, if not outright salary dump before then. So not going to get too into that, but yeah, I think something like this, or I mentioned the Dallas trade. Golden State's a little tricky too with their financial situation, but I don't know where else he would consider. He had the dalliance with Golden State a year or so ago. Dallas has been on the radar for a couple years. Cleveland is Cleveland. Then New York, I think, is a bit of a wild card in terms of does he actually want to go there? What would they be on his list? But they are big market, New York. I could see it being on there. He's got the relationship with Leon Rose previously. World Wide West. Sarah, thank you for the super chat. The Lakers centers hopes cooked options seem extremely limited. I would say if they're going through free agency. So one thing actually that I've been spending the last 2 days combing over film, statistical breakdown, film breakdown, doing my center rankings. So I have my center rankings ready. I just need to record the episode. My plan was actually to record the episode this morning, and then news happened. So I had to pivot and put that to the side for now. For what it's worth, I'll spoil a little bit. The best center, in my opinion, that is realistic with their free agency options is actually Day'Ron Sharpe. And the issue with him is he is a restricted free agent. But I think if you look at, I think he's the biggest riser. Like for me, he was more of a fringe guy or more of a back end in my top 10 after watching the film more closely with him and studying his game. I think I have him 5th on my list. And the top 4 guys are all guys they'd have to trade for. But I think if they're looking at a Sharpe, a Lopez, a Capella, a Horford, or even lower, like a Cornet, a Kevon Looney, like, yeah, they're probably cooked. I think all those guys are better suited as backups, with Sharpe being maybe the exception there. I think it's got to be, I still argue and contend that Claxton is the best available center that's realistic, checks the most boxes. People, I think, overblow his frame, and the post defense, I think, is fine. He's not like a great post defender, but he's long, he's athletic, he can block, he can contest. So I think he's more disruptive there than people give him credit for. Gafford's the other one, but that requires trading with Dallas, and I just don't know if that's possible unless, I guess, it includes LeBron potentially. And then DeAndre Ayton, I've come more around to. The biggest issue with him is the salary, just $35 million. You're gonna have to put Rui in, and I don't know that I love that. And then Robert Williams, I think, is a gamble that when he's healthy, you could argue is like 3rd or 2nd on this list. The issue is he's played 61 games over the past 3 years. I would just then argue if you're taking a risk and going for upside, would I rather have Robert Williams or Clint Capella? I'd rather have Robert Williams, like no doubt. Robert Williams is a better player than Clint Capella when he's healthy, and he might not be healthy, and that of course is a factor. I just think your ceiling with Clint Capella versus Robert Williams somehow playing 55, 60, 65 games, it's much higher with the Robert Williams outcome. So I wouldn't say they're cooked yet, but I still think that they have to trade for a center to properly address the position. I think the options on the trade market are much better than the options in free agency. And if they're just playing, there's been the reports and rumors out there, it's just going to be Capella, Horford, Lopez. Like, I mean, I just don't think those guys are good enough. Lopez is 37, Horford's 39, Capella's 31. They all have been declining production-wise for multiple years. Capella's minutes have gone down 7 straight years. Al Horford is the 4th oldest player in the league among rotation guys. Brook Lopez just got benched in the first round of the playoffs against Indiana. Like, that's grim. That's grim. I can't really sell you the optimism there. So I will say not yet, but I still think they have to make a trade. Jay Hoodie, again, thank you for the super chat. About the DFS situation, it's another example of inconsistency from the front office. You gave away 3 seconds for DFS to not re-sign him. He's not officially gone yet, but if they lose him. Yeah, I mean, look, this could all be just posturing, and that was the way I thought this was going a few days ago. But again, I thought they were going to figure out an extension, and the fact that they didn't, that is a little concerning. And now there is a lot of buzz that there are multiple suitors out there for him that would be attractive and offer the full non-taxpayer MLE. So, he would take a slight pay cut this season, but he's getting the extra year or 2 and getting that salary down the road, rather than if he gets like a 3-year deal, then all of a sudden, probably that 4th year, he'll be a vet minimum player, if we're being honest, at like 35, 36. So it is an overpay, like longer term, but I think you just got to bite the bullet and do it, to be honest. Like they don't want to your point, like give up all they gave up and then just lose him. Rich, thank you for the super chat. What can they actually do in the frame of reality? Well, it's a good question. And, on this show, we try to keep things in the frame of reality and try not to overreact and try to give the proper perspective. I would say in the short term, I would prioritize figuring out what Dorian Finney-Smith wants, and within reason, of course. If he's going to get 20 plus million from some other team, then that might just be a situation where you lose out on him, and it is what it is. But within reason, within the mid to even high teens, I think he's worth that salary, and I think you got to figure out 3 or 4 year deal with him and get that settled within the next 24 hours or so. Outside of DFS, or once that's settled, I think then you have to go nail your 5.7 taxpayer MLE. That'll hard cap you at the second apron. They're already hard capped at the second apron because of the draft and purchasing a pick. But that further cements that you're hard capped at the second apron. And that I'm fine with. If it's Lopez or Capella on that, that's fine. For me, the issue is like you lose DFS and you spend the 14.1 on them. Like you're plugging the center hole kind of, but you're also just losing a rotation player. Like Dorian Finney-Smith is their 5th best player. Sometimes even their 4th best, but I would say on average their 5th best. Was a closer, but was a starter at the end of the first round. So like you can't just lose that guy for nothing and then replace him with a center that you could have potentially gotten, especially if it's Capella, with the 5.7 and kept DFS. So I would say extend and figure out, or not extend, but re-sign DFS, figure that situation out. Go get a center probably with that 5.7, whoever's the best center available you can get. And then I think you have to be aggressive on the trade market, and you have to put Dalton in the first and the expirings on the table and see what you can get. And you have to do at least one trade, if not two. I'm saying like we saw what they got at the deadline, right? Mark Williams, we saw what he just went for again. If you put Dalton in the first on the table, you're going to get something. And I think you're going to get an upgrade, and I think you're going to get a notably better player than Connect for at least the next couple of seasons. Ideally, you can get the Claxton or the Gafford or someone of that ilk that can be your center for the foreseeable future. I think it's actually a positive that Gafford just extended. He's under contract now for multiple years at relatively team-friendly contracts. So either one of those guys, if it costs a little bit more than you're comfortable with, you're kind of in that position now to show, LeBron, but even if you don't care about LeBron because he's at the end of his career, which I think would be a mistake, but let's just say they don't, you still got to impress Luka. And I think that's something that they have to factor in. So I think nothing's really changed in terms of what's realistic. It's just a matter of them actually executing it. Adele, thank you for the super chat. I think the only way to build that roster for Luka Braun is trading Austin plus all the other assets. I don't see another way to have a contending team this year. Austin for Kessler and expiring plus DK for AWO. So you're saying Wiggins. So I would assume that's Rui in that case. I mean, I'll be honest, like one of the things I wondered is, sorry, I was just checking Twitter, which I probably should never do during I was checking my mentions, which I should never do during really ever. I would say that I had the thought about Austin, and if this potentially puts more pressure on them to make a decision with him. I've gotten no insight into that or no new information on that. I think they're viewing Austin as a longer term piece and a piece that's probably going to outlast LeBron. So I think they're still prioritizing him. But if you are serious about a win now move and you want to appease LeBron, appease Luka in terms of building a contender, maybe it is trading Austin, and maybe there is something that you can find that makes sense. And maybe you do pivot, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying that's likely, but I have had that thought over the past 3 hours of, does this mean Austin is potentially more likely to get moved or them to at least consider it? And what does that mean? But it is an interesting question. Tough Cookie, thank you for the super chat. If Luka leaves, what team could you see him with? This question. I I've mentioned this before, I believe, like a while ago. I want to say right when Luka got to the team. The team I could see is Miami. I did hear around the time of the trade that had things fallen out with Dallas in a more natural manner in terms of them. Maybe he's still in Dallas. They don't trade him. They don't offer him the extension, or they're hesitant to offer him the full extension this summer. And then all of a sudden he wants out or starts to explore his options. Miami was a team that I heard around the time of the Luka trade. Now he's a Laker, so I think we're far away from Luka potentially leaving. I think a more realistic thing in the disaster scenario would potentially just be him not extending and like seeing how next season goes and what they potentially do ahead of the deadline, and then that factoring into his future. But I don't see Luka not extending and asking out. I just think we're that's way too premature of a conversation. I know you're not suggesting that necessarily, but I just want to be clear and upfront with that. I mean, I think every team would move heaven and earth to try to acquire him. So I mean, he likes the water, he likes beaches. So again, Miami. Otherwise, there's not really another like beachy team. I mean, Orlando. I don't see another clear suitor. So does he team up with Jokic in Denver? Like I'm just spitballing here, but I think Miami, my read, would be the biggest threat if he were going to leave. Gabriel, thank you for the super chat. The most ideal scenario with the LeBron opt-in would be Jared Allen and Garland for LeBron, and flip Garland for wings like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Yeah, I agree in terms of the best package the Lakers could get. You get Garland, then you could flip Austin or Garland at that point, and have the other one with Luka, and then trade the other one for wings. You could probably get, not even probably, you could get more for Garland. So I think maybe trading Garland. He's also a small guard, so like Austin's bigger. He's a better defender. I'd rather have, if we're just talking defensively, I'd rather have Austin. So I think you could sell me on then flipping Garland. But again, as I mentioned, it's a little complicated with the second apron rules, and you got to have a third team, and you might have to reroute some salary previously. So it is complicated to make a Cleveland trade work. Brilliance wins. Kessler, Gafford, and Nick Claxton, Wiggins, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Bruce Brown, Capella. That's the path to a title. Thank you for the super chat. I agree. I agree, though. You started losing me progressively later in the second sentence, right? So I agree. Kessler, Gafford, or Claxton, go get one of those dudes, and that's like about as well as you could do with the realistic tradable center options. Wiggins, I've talked about. I think he's one of the best two-way wings available. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I like as a two-way guard / wing in free agency. And then Bruce Brown or Capella. I mean, it's the way I see it, unless like, I don't know if you're saying all these guys together or you're just mentioning options. It would be hard for me to see them get Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Bruce Brown and Capella. I think those guys are going to go most likely for the taxpayer MLE or higher. Not mentioning Nas going for the full non-taxpayer, if not more, but Bruce Brown and Capella, I think, are going for the taxpayer MLE or higher. And so I don't know if you're suggesting they go for the minimum in this scenario. Like, sure, if you could get Bruce Brown and Capella on minimums, that would be great, but I don't think that's realistic. I think more realistic is trading for a center and then getting a Brown or a Capella with one of your, probably the 5.7 exception. But Wiggins, I'm a fan of a potential Wiggins trade, and I think that one's looking unlikely right now. Young Claire, thank you for the super chat. Where do you see this going? Does LA make a trade for a big and sign a vet out of free agency? Predictions as to what actually happens? I would say they figure out the DFS situation. They retain him. They sign Capella for the 5.7. And then it's tough for me to make a trade prediction because I think LA, again, how many times have we had the conversation about rumors and who they're attached to, and like how many times does that often play out? It often doesn't play out that way. So they are always working in the shadows and pulling something out of a hat. So I could see some type of trade that we don't foresee coming. I just being on, like, I've gone through every cap sheet, I've gone through every depth chart, and I've listed out all the centers. I've gone through like who should be available, who shouldn't, with what the Lakers realistically trade. I'll say if they're willing to put Austin on the table, that opens up a different class of center. But in terms of unrealistic centers, like, I'll just read it to you guys right now with my center ranking that I have. Here's my list of unrealistic centers. Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't think they have enough to get him, even with putting Austin in. And Memphis wants to keep him. They want to extend him. Bam Adebayo, I don't think they have enough, even putting Austin in. Jared Allen, I don't think they have enough in general, just because why would Cleveland want to trade him when they look like the clear-cut favorite in the East right now? Also, like, them trading for Austin Reeves doesn't make sense when they have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. So unless the Lakers are trading LeBron, Jared Allen doesn't make sense to me. Walker Kessler, just a price thing. If they're putting Austin in, that changes that. But if they're not putting Austin in, I have a hard time seeing them swinging Walker Kessler. Derek Lively, similar thing. He's still on a rookie contract. I think the price is going to be high. I don't even know if they would do it if they put Austin in. And he's the center of the future in Dallas. Miles Turner, it would have to be a sign and trade, which hard caps you at the first apron. And I think Indiana needs him for that 2026-27 bounce back season once Halliburton's back. Okongwu and Jalen Duren, they've already offered the Mark Williams package for, as I said recently. And I think Atlanta still needs a center after the Porzingis trade. You could pencil him in for 40 to 50 games, but nothing more. And I know they drafted a big, but I think on paper, Okongwu is still their best center, in my opinion, and is a young developing center. Duren, Detroit is now set up to maybe be the 3 or 4 seed in the East. I don't see why they'd just be trading Duren. And like, I don't think Austin makes sense there when you already have Cade. So I don't really see a clear fit for Detroit. And then another name I'm throwing in is Santi Aldama. I guess that's a name maybe for the non-taxpayer MLE if that opens up for the Lakers, but he's more of a 4 than a 5. He's kind of like a 4.5, not a traditional center, but I think it's going to cost the full taxpayer or non-taxpayer MLE. And again, he's not really a true center. So you might just be exacerbating the power forward problem. So in terms of predictions, it's hard for me to say on trade. Like, I can tell you the names I've heard. I can tell you the teams that the Lakers have good relationships with, which often is an indicator of whether they're going to make a trade or not. But I would say DFS Capella for 5.7, and then maybe a bargain, wing or guard with a vet minimum, and then some type of trade. I think they will make a trade. I can't tell you with confidence who. Christian, thank you for the super chat. With Jazz trading for Nurkic, is Kessler out? Unless I'm making sure I haven't missed anything. We just got an update with Lonnie Walker. Sixers are declining his option, so he's a free agent. I don't. Nurkic is so, like, multiple levels below. Nurkic is no longer a starting level center. I think we saw that in Phoenix, and I know he had like a slight bounce back, I guess you could call it, with Charlotte, but not in like a meaningful starting level way, more in I don't know if this is like, I guess thinking, to repeat, like, I went live immediately right after this trade happened and thinking about it a little bit more. Maybe Utah really likes Nurkic as a backup center, and it's expiring. There hasn't been much of a market for Sexton. I think he's one of those guys that, like, people look at the scoring, people look at his game, and they think he's more valuable to NBA teams than he is when around the league. I think they look at some of the limitations, particularly with his size, and we've seen teams start to go away from smaller guards. With Charlotte, it's more of a talent upside play. With Utah, they do have a bit of a backcourt logjam. They're developing, Keontae George, and now they just got Ace Bailey. And I'm trying to talk myself into it. I still think I really don't get it from Utah's perspective. I feel like you could have been gotten a better center for Sexton if you were trading Sexton. I just don't doesn't make sense to me, but I don't think it means Kessler's out necessarily. I think it is the precursor to another deal. Is that Sexton? I mean, is that Kessler? Maybe, but if you're trading Kessler and replacing it with Nurkic, I don't get it. Kevin Mendez, shout out to Kevin, part of the Buha's block team. For those who watch the draft show, thank you for the super chat. Says, what do you think the Lakers realistically do this offseason with the LeBron update? So I've touched on this a little bit, and I will I think they got to figure out the DFS situation first and foremost. That's the biggest thing. Secure him, go get the best center you could get, or really the best player you could get, but probably a center with that 5.7 taxpayer MLE. Find some bargain free agents with vet minimum contracts, and then you got to be aggressive on the trade market. I think you got to put the first and Dalton on the table and see what's the best you can get. And if you put that, think about it like 2K or even like your fantasy league, you put it on the block. We are willing to trade Dalton and the first, send us your best offer and see what you get. And from there, you just execute the best deal or two. I think that's really all they can do, unless they're willing to trade Austin. And then that opens up a totally different door and set of circumstances of what they can do. And maybe that happens again. I've not heard that yet, but it's still early in this process. Russell Garrett, thank you for the super chat. Think Sharp takes tax MLE this year with much larger second and third years when they have more cap room. Would that compare with Nets with what? You're talking about a poison pill with Sharp. That's an interesting one. I wonder what the limit for Brooklyn is, because the biggest issue with Sharp is simply he's a restricted free agent, to your point. And teams have increasingly stayed away from making offers to restricted free agents. Typically, teams just offer it unless it's a ridiculous contract. I don't see Sharp getting a ridiculous contract. So if it's the 5.7 tax MLE, Brooklyn probably matches that. Like, there's really no reason for them not to. If they can open up the non-taxpayer and then give him more than that, I don't think they'd give him the full, but maybe give him 8 million, 9 million, something like that. Like, maybe Brooklyn just lets him walk at that point, but you are risking tying your exception up for, forget if it's, I think it's 72 hours, something like that. So you are risking that and then losing out on free agents, because it's a game of musical chairs. And one big thing that has kind of changed, I think, more recently is free agents don't really wait, because the market, there's so many moving parts that if you wait, you can be the Gary Trent Jr. who gets squeezed and ends up being a minimum player when you probably should have been a non-taxpayer or at least taxpayer MLE guy. So if they tie their cap space up in a restricted free agent or their cap exception, whatever, then there's risk there of them just, if Brooklyn matches, then they're screwed, and now all of a sudden their options are gone. So you can't really tell Clint Capella, hey, we want this guy, but if it doesn't work out, like, don't sign with anyone else and then we'll sign you. Like, that's just not how it works. So they could maybe poison pill it. To be honest, I'm not as familiar with the poison pill structure off the top of my head. Like, it would be similar to what teams did with Austin or tried to do or were considering doing with Austin and that poison pilling him when he was a restricted free agent. But I think Brooklyn probably retains him. I think that's the biggest issue right now. JB, I like the initials. Thank you for the super chat. Last time Braun forced LA to make a trade, we ended up with Westbrook. Yes. Now, fair point. Although, yeah, I mean, I think you could argue like the 2023 deadline was, there was some pressure applied there in terms of getting off Westbrook. But I guess if you're saying like publicly posturing and statement or playing the media game, I'd also look at, like, there were a couple of alternative trades that would have been much better, like the Buddy Hield trade could have kept KCP, or even the DeRozan trade. I didn't love the DeRozan fit, but he just was a better player. Maybe not a better, let me take that back. I don't know if he was a better player at the time. I think, like, with how Russ felt like Russ almost like aged as a Laker, and he's just never quite been the same player since then. I don't want to get into the whole Russ thing, but coming off that Washington year, maybe you could debate Russ versus DeRozan at that time, but I think DeRozan was a better fit than Westbrook. although he had limitations with his shooting and whatnot, like he was still not a great fit either. I talked about it at the time. Like, I think Westbrook and Ben Simmons were the two worst fits in the league as a third star just because of the lack of shooting. You could make a case DeRozan was the third worst. So I think the Lakers were going after the wrong stars. I know they'd gone after Dame. They'd gone after Beal. Those weren't realistic, though. Beal wouldn't have aged well. But, I mean, you're not wrong. I don't see a Westbrook trade out there for the Lakers. I don't see an albatross contract that they're going to take on. They're relatively limited in terms of the salary. Like, it's probably something under $30 million. So, or 35 at most. So I don't see a really damaging contract out there. They're not trading for Bradley Beal. They're not trading for Dame off a torn Achilles. Like, I think there's only so much harm they can really, like, I guess, like, look, I could could eat my words and be completely wrong and they do a really bad trade, but I think there's only so much they could do that would be harmful here. Tom, Jovan, who's your GOAT? My GOAT is LeBron. I've talked about that before, but I think he's the GOAT. But I think it's close. I think you could argue either way. I have no issue. I'm not like, if you think Jordan's the GOAT, you're an idiot. Like, I think it's close. Shopping cart, I don't see a question, but I appreciate the super chat. Professor Tech Nerd, thank you for the super chat. Best business move, call LeBron's bluff, get media attention, and contend well enough, keep ticket sales and free cap space when he walks next year. I mean, that might be the move or the way the Lakers approach this. They might just operate business as usual. I think the interesting thing with this is that we're not considering, I think here, or just, a lot of the discourse right now is like, what does Luka want? Does Luka want them to go all in and to go all in with this group around LeBron, around Austin, and try to maximize next season? Or does Luka see the forest through the trees? Does he see the big picture? And maybe the best move is to kind of have ride out this year, hope you can sign like a decent guy for that tax exception. And then 2026 is the big summer where can you go get that second star that, if LeBron retires or goes elsewhere, can you go get that second star and have that cap flexibility where if you make a trade, you sign a guy to an exception, all of a sudden your cap space is getting eaten up for next summer and you don't have that flexibility. So that's something that the Lakers really have to weigh, and that's something that Luka has to weigh. And I assume like that's going put LeBron and DFS to the side for a second. Like, I think those guys are important pieces and their futures are important. Like, the biggest thing for the Lakers is Luka and what Luka wants. And I think if I'm them, like, you have to be having conversations with Luka or his representation and his management, like right now, putting out this fire and also figuring out, I'm sure they've had some of these conversations and I know they have, but like, with this coming out though, I think you just need to reaffirm what he wants and make sure you guys are aligned moving forward with the best way to operate. So that would be my read on that. But yeah, I mean, you can call LeBron's bluff, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they kind of have in the past. They kind of have the last couple of years. So we'll see. The custodian, Lexus King, 4 years, $40 million for DFS. Too little, too much. I think the years are good for what he wants. I think the money is a little low. I think we probably are starting close to, I think I had predicted 4 years, 48. I want to say like a few weeks ago on a live. I think that's more in line with like probably the lower end, honestly, of what he wants. But I think you got to get closer to 48, 50 million, around like the 12 million. And even that might be a little bit low for what he wants. He might want it closer to 14, 15 million. So I do think 440 is too low. I think if that ends up being it and it's a compromise on the years versus the money, I think it's probably a win-win for both sides. But I think he's going to want he's going to want more. It's probably going to be starting at 50 plus. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Sorry if you hit this, Jovan, but seems like Luka likes playing with LeBron. Is he turned off if there's a Bron/LA breakup, if he values loyalty factor? I think it's a factor for sure. I can't tell, like, without directly hearing from Luka or his representation, which I haven't had those conversations in the last few hours yet. I can't tell you with confidence like how much of a factor that is, but certainly Luka's, I think Luka being a guy who values loyalty is something that would actually be more of a factor in him staying with the Lakers and maybe looking past some of the stuff that happens this summer. However, I also think it's a factor of if LeBron follows up with this and actually asks out, how they manage that is going to be interesting, because that's going to be a sign, that's going to be a tell as to how they, like LeBron's been there 7 years. He won a championship for them. He helped revive the state of Lakers basketball with where it was at in 2018. You could argue it was on the rise and maybe it would have gotten back to winning a championship or being here, but like we can't deny that LeBron made an impact by coming here in 2018. So I think how they handle that will be an interesting factor as well, just because if they play real hardball and don't honor LeBron's request, which is in their right, and I think you can make the argument for that if you want to, like, how does Luka view that? Does he view it as like, okay, well, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, maybe I want something or I want out or whatever, and how are they going to treat me? How are they going to honor that? So I think that could be a factor. I don't think it's the biggest factor. I don't think it's going to lead to him leaving. I think he's staying. I think he's going to extend, but I think there's pressure on them to, I'm saying that while also assuming they're going to either re-sign DFS or sign someone with the non-taxpayer MLE. They're going to make a trade or two and like they're going to go for it. If they don't go for it, that opens up the possibility of a lot of things, I think, which could include Luka at some point, looking elsewhere. But I think that's premature. And I think ultimately, I said it at the top, like I think LeBron's staying. I think Luka's staying. I think Luka's extending. So, Oi da boy, thank you for the super chat. Do you think fans are right asking LBJ for a pay cut? I don't. Look, I will say, I think I've kind of made my opinion on this clear, so I don't want to rehash it too much. I would just say I don't feel comfortable ever asking anybody to take a pay cut. I think all of us, like we're not, or I would assume most of us, I don't know, maybe some of you in the audience are making millions and or billions, who knows, kudos to you. But I think most of us are not making millions, and taking a pay cut is a real thing that affects your life. And now I don't think that's the case with LeBron, but I just think it's easy to say take $15-20 million off and open this up. But I also think a lot of times one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is like these free agency conversations are happening immediately after the season. They're being played out. Like I'm sure, I don't have all the intel and information as to how free agency is going to play out, but I'm sure there are executives and people that do, Shams probably does, right? So like there's a roadmap to how this is all going to play out and who's going to stay where and who's going to go. And these things have been ongoing for weeks and even months in some cases. So point being, like, I'm sure LeBron has a pretty good pulse on who's going to be available for the Lakers. And I think with how things are trending and how this is looking in terms of the options, I don't think there's a player right now, unless Na is willing to take a notable discount to go to the Lakers. I do not see a player worth LeBron taking a $15-20 million discount and the Lakers using the non-taxpayer on that player. Like, it's not Brook Lopez. It's not Bruce Brown. It's not Clint Capella. It's not Al Horford. Who's the guy? Like, or the guys? I just don't see it. So I get, like, if LeBron was all about winning, like, sure, if you want to make the case he has, like, he wants to have his cake and eat it too, to an extent. I agree. And I get he wants to get his maximum money and he wants the Lakers to improve. And those things are kind of at odds. So if you want to criticize that, I totally get it. I just think it's easy to say give up 15-20, like that's a lot of money, even to someone who's worth over $1 billion. That's not, it's one thing if it was like $2 million, $3 million, like a haircut off his salary to get the Lakers on, like he did last year. I think it was 2-point-something million. That's one thing, but once you're, double digit millions is a lot of money. So even to LeBron. But again, if you want to, like, you could also make the case that how, like, he's not 100% in on winning in terms of like doing, like, exhausting all options. We've seen Tim Duncan, Tom Brady, but they were also in the same situation for their entire career, or at least at that point. So it's different. It's tough, but I'm more on the side of like, I don't blame him for not taking a pay cut. I also don't see the option that would have been the panacea for what the Lakers need. RGN Cal 4, thank you for the super chat. I'm late. Braun opted in, wants to be traded. I don't think it's at the point of him wanting to be traded. He has not demanded or asked out yet, but I think he is applying pressure on the Lakers to notably upgrade the roster. And if they don't, then I think we could be getting to the point where he opts out, but we're not there yet. And look, I don't disagree with him in terms of like the roster needs to be better. I've been saying that they need to make a trade or two. They need to nail their tax signing, and they need to nail vet minimum guys in free agency. Like the roster needs improvement. So a couple things can be true. Rich, thank you for the super chat. Do you think Mavs and Lakers can do LeBron business? I do. The interesting thing with this is like, is there potential draft capital? Because if you just look at the names, like we talked about the Knicks potential trade earlier, and it's OG, I think Robinson and McBride, and that's like 3 top 7 guys on a team that made the conference finals. It's a bona fide, legit 3-and-D player in OG Anunoby, a guy who gets all defense votes, a guy who some people were even arguing for as like a back-end all-star for this past year. I never quite got there with OG, but like he's a really, really good player. There's a reason why he's making over $40 million. That I think is better. Like OG is better than anyone Dallas would realistically trade the Lakers. He's better than Gafford. He's better than PJ Washington. So if the Mavericks are potentially doing a trade of Gafford and Washington and Clay, and again, Clay's at a different phase of his career, so I'm not, of course, prime Clay, Hall of Famer, first ballot, all that stuff, but not currently. And whatever, it's Christie, Marshall, Martin. Think they could do even a couple small, like Omax, whatever it is. Like I think you probably have to put in 1 pick to just like optically make it look more even and to offset your trading, not the like best package of players, but you are giving Luka starting center that he went to the finals with, starting wing he went to the finals with, Klay Thompson, a guy he signed off on Dallas adding last summer, and then potentially if it's Max Christie, I think we know how good he is and his fit in LA, or even I think Najee Marshall showed a lot of improvement in Dallas last year. Like it's not the best package, and that's the thing I've been trying to say is I just don't see them getting like a young all-star and multiple picks because LeBron's about to be 41, year 23, 1 to 2 years left. It's such a short-term win-now move that I see teams being interested. I just don't see a motherload offer, but I could be wrong. John Drake, thank you for the super chat. Braun for Cat works. Braun winning a ship in New York would be cherry on top. Last dance counterpunch. John continues to have one of the best profile pictures in the game with the cigar. Yeah, I mean, it works. You got to put some, it would probably have to be Braun plus, I don't know, Kleba because I think Cat's not up in the 60s yet, actually. It might work straight up. You might be right. I know Cat gets into the 60s at some point, but he's right now I'm checking, he's at 53. So it actually works perfectly. Lakers save a few $100,000 for what that's worth. It's interesting. I just don't, I'll say I don't like Cat and Luka pick and pop. Amazing. Cat and Luka defensive tandem and Austin. I don't like that. So I'm not the biggest Cat guy. I think you need a certain build. It's one thing if you put him with like OKC and you have a bunch of defensive demons on the perimeter and just a bunch of dogs and guys who are disruptive and they can kind of protect him. But I think you have to build your defense a certain way. And I think New York tried to do that around Cat and Brunson. I just think there's a limitation there. And I think there would be a similar one with Austin, Luka, and Cat. Victor, Jovan is it Wei Lin, potential candidate for Lakers Summer League? I have not been as tapped in on the Summer League front, so I wish I could give you a better answer here. I've not heard that as of right now. All right, diving into the chat. I know I got a bunch of super chats. Large Laker fan says, excuse me, Jovan, sources are saying other teams are ganging up on the Lakers' need for a center. Did Rob accidentally create a vulnerable scenario perfect for other teams to work together to prey on? Look, like I've talked about the Lakers tax before. I do believe there is a bit of a Lakers tax I think if like again, I don't know how many of you play fantasy football, but I'm a big fantasy football guy. I'm in multiple leagues, and if there's like the one guy in your league, I think the best example of like the Luka trade would just be like we in every league I'm in, there's always like the one person that you can prey on in terms of you send the low ball offers and they'll occasionally bite on it, and you know, they end up trading. I don't even want to say like 80s like an RB2 or something because that's disrespectful, but let's say you trade a low end RB1 for, or this person trades a low end RB1 for a top 2 or 3 running back or a low end WR1, whatever, if those play fantasy, and they get like a top 3 player back, top 4, however you want to describe Luka. You're going to be upset with that person who pulled off the trade. Of course, you're going to be upset with the person who traded, but you're going to be more upset actually with the person who got the player. And if you're doing a potential trade with them, some people are going to be pragmatic and objective and just be like, look, I'm going to just do the best trade for me. Some people are going to be like, there's a little bit of a tax here because I don't want to look like I did this person a favor or that this person won the trade. So I think the Lakers are dealing with a little bit of that. I don't think it's some grand conspiracy to undermine the Lakers or to not trade with them. I also think one of the issues with the Lakers, and this has been an issue with them for the last few years, is that they have such limited assets and resources that they are rarely coming into trade talks from a position of power. Like teams know the most you could get out of the Lakers is some combination of, if they're not putting Austin in, some combination of Rui, Dalton, the first, and like swaps. So you're always going to ask for the most. Like that's just shrewd management, shrewd negotiation. So I get why some of these teams are playing hardball. I get why, like they know the Lakers are in a desperate position. They have the LeBron situation looming. They have the Luka situation looming, and they want to upgrade the roster. So I don't think this is some like anti-Lakers conspiracy or some grand plan from the rest of the league. I do think there's an element of a little bit of backlash from the Luka trade, not wanting to necessarily help the Lakers out, but I also think they have limited assets. So you're going to ask for everything and then hope to get like 75% of that. So I think it's more so that. Let me know in the chat if there's any news that I want to make sure I'm up to date. I'm trying to keep checking Twitter. Eric Gordon declined his player option. Elite Hoops, I see you did a super chat, but I don't see a question. I appreciate it. Sports fan Jack, Sharp was not tendered by the Nets. Okay, so we have a development here. Looking it up. Just happened. They declined to, he's an unrestricted free agent. So let's take a step back here. Okay, we got some interesting breaking news. I think Dorian Sharp then should become the Lakers' top target at the center spot in free agency. I would rather pay Dorian Sharp above Brook Lopez. I also think you might be able to get him just for the taxpayer MLE. You might, if DFS leaves and you have the non-taxpayer, you could use part of that, more than the taxpayer MLE, more than the 5.7, but you don't have to go all the way up to 14. I don't even know if you have to go up to 10. And so if you could get Dorian Sharp at 8 million or 7 million versus Brook Lopez at 14, I would much rather have Dorian Sharp. He's 23. He's one of the best rebounders in the league, monster offensive rebounder, good finisher, a little bit on the smaller side, but I'm looking at my notes here, so I'll just read it to you guys. Case for him is elite offensive rebounder. I think he's one of the best rebounders, if not arguably the best among realistic guys. He can punish mismatches. He is a good cutter and diver into open space. He's got quick feet. He can show and recover well in the perimeter. More of a drop big, but can do a little bit up to touch or hedging. Good technique with his verticality. He's strong. He's sturdy. He has a high motor. The Nets were 12.1 possessions per Points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor than off this past season, which was the highest mark of any of the realistic centers I've been looking at. At 23, he's younger than Dalton Connect, so he has plenty of room to grow and develop. And I think he has much higher upside than the aging retreads of Lopez, Capella, and Horford. Case against him was he was a restricted free agent, which now that's off the board. He's unproven as a starter. He's primarily been a backup through his first 4 years. He's not a high flyer. He is a lob threat within certain windows of space, but he's not like the Claxton, Gafford, or Robert Williams type of finisher. He is tied for the shortest player with the smallest wingspan. He's 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan of the 10 players I'm looking at. He can struggle a little bit on the perimeter in terms of walling off penetration. Sometimes doesn't take the best angles with his feet, though you can coach that up. And among the group of 10 guys I'm looking at, trade targets, free agency targets, he had the third worst rim field goal percentage and the third worst rim field goal percentage allowed. So I think he needs to improve at least in one of those areas, if not both. Not bad necessarily in either area, but when evaluating him versus some of the other guys, I think those areas could be better. But his advanced metrics are all good. He does project as a guy who could be in line for a bigger role. So I think he vaults to me above Lopez and Capella. Elite Hoops, I don't see it. Mr. TD, we should have gotten him in the DFS trade. I agree. They should have just had him. Sky Falcon 5 says same agent as AR. Get it done, Rob. Yes, that is true. Dark Galaxy says if Plinka doesn't do it, I'm out. And look, maybe here's if DFS walks, you could potentially even split the non-taxpayer between Capella and Dayron. And I kind of like that because you get the older, more experienced guy. I still think Capella has a lot left in the tank. I know I mentioned his minutes have been on the decline for 7 straight years, but he's got high-level reps in a heliocentric pick and roll heavy offense with James Harden and Trae Young. He's been a starting center. He's been in the conference finals before as a starting center, actually multiple times. So he's been on deep playoff runs. He's only 31, much younger than Lopez or Horford. So you could sell me on a sharp Capella, split the non-taxpayer MLE on those two guys, and then you're aggressive on the trade market, go and get a wing, but you still are losing DFS. And DFS is better currently than Sharp or than Capella. So like the net is, yes, you're getting like a second player in free agency with that exception and replacing DFS like on paper, but I think you're getting worse in terms of like your top end rotation guys. But that's an interesting one. I think that's a big development for the Lakers. All right, I'm catching up on the chat here. Oi da boy. Nice change of the profile picture here to Shaq and Kobe. Which teams realistically would trade for the King? I mentioned 4 teams at the top. I mentioned Dallas, Golden State, New York, and Cleveland. If we pull up the standings here, see where he makes sense. Cleveland, homecoming, history, poetic end to his career, full circle, or, second full circle. I could see it. Boston doesn't make sense, and he will not go to Boston. I'm fairly confident in saying that. New York could make sense. Indiana does not make sense. Milwaukee, Detroit, Orlando. Miami's interesting, I guess, but if you could keep Hero and Bam and maybe Ware and whatever else is left, like I'm looking at it from Miami's perspective. Atlanta, Chicago, Toronto, Brooklyn, Philly, like none of the other East teams really make sense, I think, other than Cleveland and New York. maybe Miami, but also he didn't leave on the best terms there. And I think he and Pat have patched it up since then, but I don't know. I don't really see. Brooklyn's too far away. Philly's a mess. Everyone else is just kind of bleh. Looking at the West, he's not going to OKC. Houston would be tough to pull off. I looked at it. You probably have to put Şengün in it, and I just don't see why Houston would want to do that. Like, maybe you could win a title over the next year or two, but I'd rather, of course, have the multi-years of Şengün, like long-term. Denver is not happening. Clippers is not happening. Minnesota, I don't see him wanting to play there. Golden State, again, I mentioned them as an option. Memphis, Sacramento, Dallas as an option. Phoenix is interesting, but I mean, Lakers are not going to take on Bradley Beal, so that doesn't make sense. Portland, San Antonio, but did they send back Fox? I mean, that doesn't really seem like a San Antonio move. New Orleans, Utah, yeah. So I stand by the 4 teams I mentioned. 2 in the West, the Warriors and Mavericks, and 2 in the East, the Cavs and Knicks. I don't really see any other teams that make sense. Nico Harrison's burner, thoughts on Ayton. So I guess we're kind of just getting into my center rankings here. So my notes on Ayton. He's the most offensively skilled center of the group that I think is realistic. He can roll, he can pop, he can catch and shoot, he can post up, he can cut, he can dive. He is an elite rim scorer, shoots over 80% at the rim. He has an array of moves. He's got a soft touch. Is mainly a drop big, but is capable of switching against some big wings and power forwards. Actually held up well against Giannis in some of the film I watched. A solid post defender, leverages his 7'6" wingspan well. Would give the Lakers another 15-plus point per game score, especially if they're giving up Rui. He can replace Rui, and I think has even more consistency on that end in terms of his offensive output. Was the starting center on a finals team, 2021 Suns. And first 2 playoff appearances was a playoff riser. Last postseason he played in was rough, but the first couple he was better in the playoffs than he was in the regular season. Case against Ayton is his contract is the most expensive of any of the people I find realistic, making $35.6 million. They would almost certainly have to include Rui, which is, I don't think they necessarily have to put a pick in or Dalton, but I mean, I guess you're giving up. It's a Rui for Ayton trade as the base, and then you're also throwing in probably Gabe and Maxi Kleber. He's an expiring, so you got to figure that situation out. Are you extending him, or is he opting out? Is he a long-term piece? He hasn't played 70 games in a season since his rookie year, and he's played 7 years, so it's been 6 straight years of under 70 games. His motor is sometimes a question. That's been something people have, questioned about him is how hard he plays or stuff. I don't want to get into do they love basketball? I think some of that stuff sometimes isn't fair to guys, but those questions have been out there. I think he can sometimes rush decisions. I think this is a troubling stat I found with him. It's more turnover. Last year averaged more turnovers than assists, which is that's not good. I think it was 1.7 turnovers to 1.6 assists. So sometimes the decision-making, the processing isn't always there. And while I think he's better defensively than his reputation, I think a lot of people think of him as a liability or just a limited defender. I don't think he's as good as the Lakers would ideally want. And I think if you look at the Lakers roster and what it probably projects, there are still going to be some defensive limitations with the group and some guy, you got to kind of protect Luka. You got to protect Austin. I don't know if DeAndre Ayton's a good enough defender, to do that. Whereas guys like Nick Claxton, Daniel Gafford, Robert Williams, even a Brook Lopez, maybe a Goga Batazzi, I have more confidence in those guys being. Goga is actually more of a borderline one, but some of the other top options, I have more confidence in them manning a top 10 defense and protecting some of those guys. Where I don't know if I have the same confidence in Ayton. His advanced metrics are really good. I get the case for him. I think the biggest issue is just the price. Young Claire, do you think Sharp leaps Capella on LA's board? He should. I'm pulling up my text, just making sure that There's some Lopez buzz. I would say Sharp should be. Richard Case says, Jovan, hopefully you caught my apology for Austin. He's growing on me. I call you out on stage. I'm apologizing on stage. I appreciate it. I know there's a lot of Austin. Like, we've barely talked about Austin, and I prefer it that way just because I don't like getting into the whole Austin debate. But appreciate you. I mean, you have nothing to apologize for. Your opinion's your opinion. But I appreciate it. Music 420, told you before, there's a high chance Luka is gone. I think that's premature, but did it go up by like 1%, 2% today, maybe? Christian Navarez, Luka / Bam duo is amazing to think about. Luka and Bam is interesting because Bam isn't the like high pick and roll big. He's more of a hub unto himself around the elbows and at the top of the arc. So I don't know. Defensively, I think his track record speaks for himself. He's a multi-year defensive player of the year candidate, multi-year all defense guy, one of the better defensive bigs in the league. Maybe a little bit undersized, kind of more in that Draymond role, though he's a bit bigger than Draymond. But I have no real qualms or issues with him as a starting center defensively. I think the fit, they're both smart, right? And they're both so skilled that I think it could work. I don't think it is the cleanest fit, to be honest, but you have to turn Bam into more of a pick and roll big than I think he is. And not, he is a big pick and pop guy, again, running different actions around him at the elbows, at top of the arc. He's almost a point center to some extent. And I don't know if how that works with Luka necessarily. I think they're both talented, skilled, smart enough to make it work. I would just say, I think there are better fits, to be honest, but I think the biggest hurdle is just matching the salary. He's in the low 50s, and unless you're trading LeBron, but then why would Miami do that? So I don't know if there's a clear Bam fit in terms of actual trade. Matt G, when you said keep an eye on Dallas, what would a LeBron Dallas trade look like? That I don't have an answer for. I think that's a little premature. But because I mean, look, I think if you're Dallas, you're not trading Cooper Flag. I don't think you're trading Derek Lively. You're not trading AD, and you're not trading Kyrie. So I think everyone else is on or should be on the table, and there is a framework that, looking at the trade machine, some type of Gafford, Washington, Klay Thompson, and then your pick of Max Christie, Najee Marshall, Caleb Martin. I'm guessing Dallas would prioritize keeping them in that order of Christie 1, Marshall 2, Martin 3. The Lakers would want them in that order of Christie 1, Marshall 2, Martin 3. So you haggle on that. And there's a matter of, does Dallas potentially throw in a pick because they're not really giving up a blue chip piece per se. I think Gafford's a good, solid starting center. You see a top 15 center, I would say no. He's probably somewhere in that 16 to 22 range. Off the top of my head, I'd really have to break it down. Washington is a solid 3-and-D starting wing. Went to the finals with him as a big piece, but not like an elite player. And then Christie, I think, still developing, but has shown to be either starting level player or high level bench player. And Klay Thompson's Klay Thompson, but a different phase of his career, but still starter level or high level bench guys. So you're not getting this sexy blue chip piece from Dallas. So maybe they throw in a pick, and if it's their 2026 pick, it's probably not going to be that good because they should be good next year if they trade for LeBron. So maybe that's to appease the Lakers. But then fans will be upset that they got the same amount of picks giving up LeBron as they did giving up Luka. So I don't know. I would just say I think they'll be on his list. I don't know if that's going to play out that way. Music 420. If LA doesn't get young center, wings, forwards, Luka ain't signing. If he does, he's going to ask out and need players like RJ Barrett, Wiggins, Ayton, Franz Wagner, Derek Lively. I agree with you in terms of like going younger, more athletic, more dynamic. I don't think that Franz or Lively is realistic. I think those two guys are keepers in Orlando and Dallas respectively. I think RJ could be potentially available, but you probably have to give up Reeves. I don't think the Lakers do that, but I don't see it just being like Rui and a first being enough for RJ. Wiggins is available. It's just a matter of them negotiating that. And then Ayton is available too. So I think at least 2 of the 5 are available. Andy Cruz, what will 41-year-old LeBron get you after what KD got? Good question. I mean, I think you could say like the KD package was relatively underwhelming. I don't know how many of you are Jalen Green fans, but I'm not a big Jalen Green guy. I think his upside is being like the number 3 on a title, or I don't even know if title team, but like a good team. I mean, I would even argue on Houston, he was sometimes their 3rd best player, but sometimes not. And they clearly, like, good regular season team, lost in the first round. There was some limitations and warts there. He had a really rough playoff series. So I think his ceiling is probably a number 3 on a good team. I think he's more likely a back end starter or like 6th man type. And I don't know if that's harsh, but I just think he's too inconsistent. The shot selection, the processing the game. If you look at his production, he's kind of stalled out over his first 4 years. Dylan Brooks is like a solid 3-and-D wing, but it's like not like, that's in line with, I'd rather have PJ Washington and I'd rather have Daniel Gafford than Dylan Brooks. So Clay, he just slipped so much defensively that's kind of tough, but sure that those are maybe comparable. And then you get, the 10th pick in this draft, which Malawach, solid player, good prospect, but you didn't get that much. So 41-year-old LeBron, KD's 37, I believe. He's a little bit older, or he's going to be 37 next season. But LeBron's 4 years older, has played 4 more years in the NBA, also played a lot more because he's had a much better injury track record and history than KD. So that's tough. And with KD, theoretically, he's going to play maybe 3 to 5 more years. With LeBron, it might only be 1 or 2. So you factor in the age, the mileage, you factor in how much more time he has left. Like I think KD has more trade value, to be honest. Although I still think LeBron's the better player currently. I just think KD has more trade value. So, I mean, think about Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks in a first. Gafford, Washington, Clay, Max Christie. Like, it's not that far off, in my opinion, personally. But you probably need the first, I don't know, protected first or protected first, something like that. RGN Cal 4, are we looking at Luka AR max cap space in 2026, 27? As of now, yes. That is, if LeBron had opted out or extended or opted out and re-signed 1+1, then that's in jeopardy. But as of right now, with the way the Lakers cap sheet is looking, they are going to have max cap space in 2026. All right, keep me up to date in the chat if I... All right, we got AJ Mitchell, OKC just has infinite money somehow. They're always. G Diggs, Daron Sharp just became an unrestricted free agent. We talked about it earlier. I think he should be the Lakers' top target now in the center market. All right, I'm going to go about 5 more minutes here. Let's get the final questions in. Then I got to make some phone calls and texts and see what else is going on. Tali Khalifa. Hey, Jovan, given the bearish nature of the market, should the Lakers plan on relying on Maxey as a backup C in the playoffs, or is that a bad idea? I don't like to speak in absolutes, so are there scenarios in which Maxey Kleber makes some sense? Yes, I would say that is probably more of a plan D, E, F for the Lakers. Maybe even not D, maybe plan E or F. I think if we're being honest here, I think and I've talked about it ad nauseum for going on weeks, going on months, they need to make a trade, at least one, if not two. And I think there needs to be some combination. Of course, you want to give up the least amount possible and get the most back, right? That's any negotiation, that's any trade, of course. But realistically, with what is out there, what the Lakers are offering, I think you likely need to give up one of Maxey or Gabe just as an expiring, and then Dalton and a pick. And that's going to get you in some conversations for higher level starting players. It's not going to be anyone that changes the trajectory necessarily, but if you can trade for the right player, maybe you do a second trade for the right player, and you also nail your free agency, that's where the Lakers could be cooking with something going into next season. So I would say between Maxey and Gabe, I would rather keep Gabe and trade Maxey. Gabe's the better player. But I could also see Gabe I know Gabe has more value on the trade market. So if a team is looking for that expiring $11-ish million, they're going to prefer Gabe to Maxey. So are there scenarios in which the Lakers maybe make one deal, Maxey's not in it, and he makes some sense as a backup big? Sure, but I think there are, again, we're just talking about potentially splitting the non-taxpayer MLE with Sharp and Capella. In that case, Maxey's the third string center, and I would even argue that maybe Christian Koloko is ahead of him, depending on how he continues to develop as a center prospect. So there are scenarios. I would just say that the Lakers are probably in trouble if they are relying on Maxey Kleber in a meaningful way. I do he's got the relationship with Luka. He has been a productive big before. He did have a rough past season. I believe it was the worst or second worst 3-point shooting percentage of his career. He really slipped off, didn't play the most games, so small sample size. But I think there are some concerns if Maxey Kleber is a big part of the rotation. I'll say that. Right now, I view him more as a minimum player, and I think a good locker room guy, good relationship with Luka. That stuff matters, but I don't think he should be someone they rely on. Now, could be wrong and could have a big bounce back year and look like he did 2-3 years ago, but he's been someone who's been on the decline for about 2 or 3 years. Tony G, can we use the trade assets from a LeBron trade to acquire Giannis? Yes, in theory, but I don't think you're getting a mother load of if you somehow can get multiple picks that are valuable and then flip that for Giannis, sure. But it's also if that team is trading for LeBron, why wouldn't they just go trade that for Giannis? So I'm skeptical. Down the road, maybe next year or something like that, you've accumulated enough and you get access to that next first round pick, and then you have enough picks and salary and whatever to go get Giannis. I could see that, but I would be pretty surprised if the direct assets they get from a LeBron trade would allow them to go get Giannis, because again, you would have to think that team would just go trade for Giannis instead, right? So, and now that's also depending on right now, all the chatter is Giannis is staying put. He is not formally asked out. He wants to see how next season goes. So that's even assuming Giannis is available at some point down the road, which I think he will be, but maybe not right now. But I'd be surprised if they could get enough this summer to go trade for Giannis. Mr. TD said Jovan already confirmed we're cooked. I don't want to go that far yet. I know there's been some surprises, we'll say, with the LeBron statement and it looking like DFS is potentially leaving, but I don't want to overreact. I'm big on remaining calm, not overreacting, keeping things in perspective. I would say the pathway to the Lakers being cooked is there. I'm not going to deny that. There is a pathway where the Lakers are cooked. They're not there yet. I still think they're going to figure out the DFS situation. I think they will do a trade, and I think LeBron will stay put. But that is assuming they are going to be aggressive and assertive and willing to trade the first or Dalton and like willing to go for it. If they take a step back and take a back seat to all this, then I don't know. That's where the pathway is. Like if DFS walks, they don't do anything. Okay, now you could sell me on them being cooked, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. So optimism for now. Jerry Soriano, you're a lender for life. Thank you for the super chat. Doesn't a Cam Whitmore trade fix our draft mishap? Yes and no. I mean, are you trading Jalen Hood-Schifino for him? I would say it depends on what the cost is. I think I would do Dalton for Cam Whitmore. I would not do like Dalton and a first or something like that for Cam Whitmore. I think, he's, but yeah. Big Baby Sports says, how are you, G? I'm doing well, man. Hope you're doing well. Just grinding and doing this now full time, so enjoying it. Antonio says, I thought this immediately when we got Luka, but Lakers might have to trade Austin Reeves. Ideally, I like those two together, but LeBron aside, that's a mess defensively, so Austin is the trade chip. I said earlier, that might be the way that this is heading. I don't think we're there yet, but Smokey says James Harden's going to sign a 1+1 extension. We will remember this, Smokey. You're calling your shot. Unless it just happened. Did it just happen? Oh, so he did. 2-year 80. Okay. I wasn't sure if Smokey was calling a shot. Appreciate you guys updating me in the chat. I'm trying to juggle texts and tweets and everything. Music 420. Fans should be happy. DFS opted out. He's overrated. I've been watching this guy since Luka was drafted. Trade AR for RJ plus picks. Connect picks for Kessler. To be honest, I'm not the biggest RJ guy. Especially, I'd rather have Austin than RJ, personally. But I mean, look, I'm also a big Kessler guy. So any trade that gets Kessler, I think is smart. Nico Harrison's burner. Do you think Braun thinks he could win more with Luka or AD? I don't think it's even that simple. I think you can make a case that I think Dallas has a deeper roster than the Lakers. In full strength Dallas, you're going to have AD, Kyrie, Cooper Flag, Derek Lively, Gafford, Washington, Clay, Christie, Marshall, Dinwiddie. And they're probably going to sign a point guard. That's what if they get Brogdon? That's a pretty good team. So I think they're deeper than the Lakers. Really, depends on how, if Cooper Flag is as legit as he seems to be, and I think he's going to be pretty legit. A fully healthy Dallas team is probably, I don't know, it's close, but I think they're probably better. As currently constructed, the Lakers obviously have some work to do, and we'll see what they can pull off. So, I would think Luka, because Luka's a better player than AD, but if we're looking at the full roster, Mr. TD, yo, do you think your approach changes now that you're solo? In what regard do you mean my approach? I'm trying to be more, I'm trying to go live more. I'm trying to do more content. I'm trying to be more as honest as I can with some of these things. And now I'm reporting it more through here than writing it. Typically I would write my reports first and then talk about it on here. or tease that I was going to report something, then talk about it here. But now it's different. But as I've said, there are some things in the works that I can't really talk about yet. But hopefully we'll have some sort of update for you guys, some more clarity within the next few weeks. So that would be ideal on my end. But for now, I mean, just going live more and doing my things through here. And I appreciate all the support from you guys. And I owe everybody that's watching right now. I appreciate you all. Nico Harrison's burner says, no, I'm saying, do you think LeBron thinks they should have never made the trade? No. I mean, I don't want to put my LeBron cap on and say, speak for him, but I would assume not. I mean, I think you see the way that, forget like the way that fans reacted, because fans are going to have wild emotional swings. Like that's part of the nature of being a fan. But you see the way that people around the league reacted. You see the way that executives, owners, players, coaches, 9 out of 10 people at a minimum, if not 10 out of 10, thought it was a steal for the Lakers. Of course, we can now retroactively be like, well, Dallas got Cooper Flag and, the Lakers lost in the first round and this and that. But like at the time, and that's, I think, the best thing to go off of is, what the at the time reaction and perspective. Like there's no way LeBron didn't think it was a win for the Lakers. J Note says W. Jovan. Jet says ESPN cannot confirm any outlets right now. K9 WA Buha merch. It is in. I'm working on it. It's partly determined on like what ends up happening with my job situation. Mr. TD Buha hair products. That's on the to-do list one day. Might be part of the merch. Jason said thoughts on Day'Ron Sharpe. I did a breakdown of him earlier, but I like him. I think I would prefer him over Lopez, Capella. I think he's a developing player, 23 years old, high motor, a good finisher around the basket, strong, tough. I think has quick feet on the perimeter, and probably more of a backup, to be completely honest, but could grow into being a starter, and a lot of the lineup data supported that. Tina says maybe Jovan will have memberships on his channel like Lakers Nation does. That's also something I'm considering as well. Jovan, been a minute. Kept missing streams. Congrats on departure. Big things ahead. Very happy for you. Thank you, Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the nice message. And big things are ahead. Portis extended. Okay, let's see this number. 3-year, $44 million. So that's what, 14-ish a year? 13? 15, just under 15. That's solid for Portis. That's actually I think that's pretty good value for Portis, honestly. See, I could see something like we'll say this. DFS versus Portis. It's tough. Yeah, I don't know. I think he is better than DFS. I think it's close, but like DFS is better defensively. I think that the biggest issue with Portis, to me, like a better analog for Portis is honestly Naz Reid, where they're both that floor spacing 5, stretch 5, who I think there are some defensive limitations in terms of them being a full-time starting level center. They're both best at being a third big, the first big off the bench, can kind of play the 4 in certain lineups, but more of a 5. And, you could argue those are the 2 best backup centers in the league, though I guess it also depends if, Gafford versus Lively, I also think whichever one's coming off the bench is in that conversation. But if it's interesting, Naz is a little bit younger, not even a little bit. He's probably let's see. Naz is 26, if I'm not mistaken. Naz is 25, going to be 26 this year. And then Portis, I want to say, is 31. Portis is 30, going to be, Portis is 30. So it's just interesting to me that Naz Reid's getting 25 million a year and Portis is getting under 15. I don't think there's that big of a gap between them, but that is interesting with the DFS number. I think that's probably a positive for the Lakers, to be honest. Chris says definitely missing money with no memberships. I'm aware that, it's not just about money for me. That's not how I operate, and want to make sure the memberships are something I could commit to, because obviously I'm going to have some perks in there for you guys, and want to make sure it's something that's sustainable, and I don't want to make promises I can't keep. So I've been very hesitant and diligent with evaluating what's realistic for a membership. Leonard says Buha bar soap. You know what? You guys are giving me, let me know what merch you guys want. Hair products, bar soap. We'll do it. Eeg again. Thank you for the super chat. Been meaning to ask. Sorry to come in late. Reeves via FTR and pure attempts is about 75% less likely to go to the line in the playoffs than the regular season. Turned into a spot up shooter in the playoffs at low percentage. Good points. I've talked about this since the end of the season. I talked about it in I did an episode on one thing each Lakers player has to improve on, and I also did a mailbag specifically about Austin and Luka, what they need to improve on. With Austin, I think the biggest thing is actually the second point that you're talking about. You need to be an elite catch and shoot threat around Luka if you're going to be a secondary ball handler, playmaker around him. You look at Jalen Brunson and Kyrie. They made the conference finals with Jalen Brunson, finals with Kyrie. Both guys shot 40+% on catch and shoot threes during those playoff runs. Austin, the last couple of years, has struggled with that. And I think if you want to, people love to focus on the defense. I think Austin's better defensively than advertised or than credited for, but whatever, like there are some real limitations with him and Luka. However, I think my bigger concern, honestly, with the long-term fit is if Austin can't get back to being a consistent and reliable catch and shoot guy, then that is, and it's been a small, 5 games against Denver, 5 games against Minnesota, but you combine those, he's, a low 30s, or I think low 30s combined, catch and shoot guy, which is just too low. He's got to be better. So I think that's an area he has to improve on. I think it's understandable that like some guys are just going to get to the you should probably get to the free throw line less in the playoffs. You're gonna get away with more contact in the playoffs defensively. So I don't have an issue with him getting to the free throw line less, though. To your point, like 75% less. I have to look at the numbers, but taking what you're saying, like that is a notable decrease. But I think the bigger issue for him, honestly, is the spot up shooting, and that needs to be better. Eeg, thank you for the super chat again. If his scoring via drawing fouls is so diminished, he's almost an entirely different player of archetype. Thoughts? Yeah, again, like I think the truth is with the way that Luka plays, especially in the playoffs, you need those guys to be able to play more off the ball around Luka, and that needs to be more of a spot up catch and shoot type player. So that's where, again, I think if he can hit 38, 39, 40, 41% of his threes, that puts him in more in that Brunson, Kyrie lane in terms of the shooting. The offense was a bit choppy, obviously, and like he had a bad Minnesota series. There's no other way to spin it. There's no other way to, he suffered an injury. Game 3, game 4 and 5 were affected by that, but he still was not that good in game 1 and game 2. So, that there's no like justification for it. It is something to monitor. And if he struggles again in the playoffs, then I will come on here and have a different tune about Austin in terms of the long-term fit. Mo Love says Jovan's just like LeBron. I have no idea what the context is here, but I will take it. I would love to opt into a $52.6 million deal. Make sure I'm caught up. Eeg again, thank you for the super chat. Also, ideally, I'd love to get a depoy candidate who averages 20 and shoots 40% from deep for Austin, but it's legit not happening. 90% of Austin trades are legit terrible, LOL. I agree with the last point. I think most Austin trades are unrealistic and just not fair value for Austin. Depoy candidate who averages 20 and shoots 40% from deep. I don't know who that guy is. There aren't many I'm looking at the Knicks guys because I guess that might be the closest. Regular season, OG Anunoby, 16 points a game. I think he's in that all defense caliber, but he shot 34% on threes. Bridges shot 33. So, yeah, I mean, sure, if you could find a 3-and-D guy who averages 20, shoots 40% on threes, and is a DPOY candidate for Austin, I would do that trade as well. I don't even know who that player is. Zach says Mo Wagner will enter free agency after Orlando declines his team option. Issue with Wagner is he's coming off a pretty big injury. I'm trying to see when he's projected to be back. I mean, he tore his ACL on December 21st, season-ending injury. ACL recovery is usually at least a year. 8 to 12 months. I mean, I like Wagner as a minimum guy. Like, I think he's worth, like, a healthy Mo Wagner, I think, is a taxpayer MLE or maybe even part of a non-taxpayer. Like, I think he's a solid backup, but guys, we've seen the movie before of guys coming off of injuries and the Lakers signing them. I think that's too big of a Fantasista 111 says Derek White, and then Madison says Derek White. I guess that's the closest. Like, I consider him more of a guard than a wing, but you guys are probably right. What did he shoot on threes last season? I mean, 6'4". He's a shooting guard. 16 points a game, 38% on threes. Derek White's probably the closest. And I recently said that's a guy I would trade Austin for. Eek says, my point was in general, everyone's Austin trades are really bad for the Lakers. I agree with that. Entertainment says Herb Jones. Herb Jones isn't a good enough shooter, and he also has some major health concerns if you look at the last few years. Trey Murphy is an interesting one, but I don't think he's good enough defensively to that level. In terms of, he's not like a DPOY defender. Reg Dogs TV. My name is Jovan Buha, and I love LeBron not taking a pay cut. I don't love LeBron not taking a pay cut. I just think it's easy for us to sit here and say give up $20 million to go sign Brook Lopez. I just don't. I don't think that makes sense. Andy Cruz says Austin's $30 million isn't terrible. Yeah, Austin is worth $30 million. I don't want to go down this path again. I go down this path every show with Austin. Austin is worth $30 million. Josh Giddey's about to get $30 million. And half court game winner aside, Austin is a better player than Josh Giddey. You just look at the guys getting paid $30 million. Like, I've gone through the list. He's better than those majority of the guys. Eeg again. Okay, sorry, last one. Also, if you address forget basketball and winning just purely from a last dance retirement standpoint, LeBron doing that in Cleveland makes a lot of sense. Feels like it's just vibes in general would be best fit. I get you. I see what you are saying, but there's a big issue with Cleveland in that they're a second apron team, so there are restrictions with how a trade would work. So talked about this a little bit. Probably have to be a 3-team trade. They probably have to send out some salary. Like, they ideally have to find a way to get under the second apron and then make the deal work. But it's a little complicated, and it probably costs you Allen and Garland, which, depending on how you view that as Cleveland, might be a little bit too much. I think I'd trade either one for LeBron, but thinking about the long term here, that's a lot. So yeah. Antonio Rosas says Thiero is Smush Parker's hollow #1 jersey. I hadn't seen his jersey, so I'm gonna pull up the jersey guy. Did he announce it? I don't see it, but maybe it's been announced elsewhere. but appreciate the update. John Williams, why don't we talk about getting rid of Bronny? You guys are really coming with the controversial questions late in the stream. I mean, it's just they're not getting rid of Bronny as long as LeBron's on the team. I think if LeBron gets traded, then Bronny's probably in the trade. But I think Bronny showed real promise in the G League last year. Now, is that worth, is he probably more of a two-way player than like a roster player at this point? Sure. But we knew he signed a 4-year deal when he signed with the Lakers or, got drafted with the Lakers and signed. So the Bronny situation is what it is. Bronny Van Exel says, yo, I sent a super chat that was ignored. I was curious as to how Lakers could upgrade the guard position now that Chicago traded Lonzo for Isaac Okoro. Sorry, I'm going through. Sorry. It was, okay, I see you. You asked if they could have gotten Lonzo. I mean, for that price, yeah. I guess it depends. The thing with Chicago is that, could you have shipped Gabe out for Lonzo? Financially, yeah. Why would Chicago want to do that? Okoro, you could have 24-year-old wing. I guess, I get it. I feel like it's selling low. I think they could have gotten more for Lonzo at the 2025 deadline, but the guard position, I still think the guard position is, depending on how you view a guard, I kind of view it more as like a 2.5 or 3 that needs to be the starter. And then, that guard position as the next thing after center, wing, guard. I think guard's third in the priority list, maybe even fourth if you want to argue 2 centers, because I think Lakers need 2 centers. They don't need just 1 center on the roster next year. In terms of guards, I think it's slim pickings. Maybe you could get someone in a trade, and then it's probably a vet minimum guy taking a discount. Like Bruce Brown, I guess, depending on the options in free agency, maybe he ends up being the taxpayer MLE guy. But I would say in general, it's probably, can you get a Gary Payton II? Can you get a DeAnthony Melton taking a discount, a Dante Exum, guys like that? I don't think they're getting a notable guard. And to be honest, as long as they're building around Austin and Luka, I think there's a limitation there because Luka's going to play point guard. Austin's going to play the 2 or the 1. So your backcourt already between those 2 guys playing 34, 35 plus minutes a night is pretty tight. You don't have that much. You have maybe room for 2 guys, and Gabe might be that guy, or again, maybe they get a different player. But, I think that they have bigger needs on the wing at center. Eeg says GMs making less than coaches is kind of insane with the CBA/aprons. NBA GM might be single most important front office position in sports right now. The star legacies are going to be solely based off organizational competence. I agree. I'll say though, there are some GMs who make more than some coaches. I think the top coaches make the most, but I'm sure Sam Presti, the GM salary is often not public the way that coaching salaries are, but I'm sure Sam Presti is making more than, say, JJ Redick or some of the more entry level younger coaches around the league. So more than Doug Christie. So I think the top execs are making a lot, but there is a bit of a haves and have-nots relative to the coaches in that regard. And I agree. I think this is something the Lakers could invest more in and could be something for the new ownership. Appetizers and sushi. Why does Genie keep lowballing players and coaches? Thank you for the super chat. Unless there's something I missed, is this in reference to the DFS situation? I think the DFS situation is not even really a lowballing situation. I think it's more about the years and them being concerned with his age. But I think it'll be resolved. All right. I'm going to wrap here. I appreciate you all so much for rocking with me for over 2 hours. This was fun. And if anything else happens tonight, whether it's LeBron asking for a trade, DFS re-signing with the Lakers, or just any other news, I will be back. Otherwise, I will be doing my center rankings. I'm going to guess that's probably going to come out tomorrow morning. I'll try to get it first thing in the morning to have a little bit of a shelf life. Then with the way these things work, the players will fly off, the shelves and sign with other teams. And I'll give you a list of 10 players and none of them went to the Lakers. But I do think at least one will go to the Lakers because there are several free agency guys, including Lopez, Sharp, Capella, and Horford. I think one of those guys ends up on the Lakers tomorrow. More so probably Lopez, Sharp, or Capella. And then there's also some trade guys that I think the Lakers need to heavily consider giving up potentially a first and or Dalton for. But that'll do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Like this video. Let's get those likes up, and be sure to comment and make sure you turn on channel notifications for future videos. Make sure you don't miss anything. And then for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, leave a 5-star review. Again, I'll be back if anything breaking happens. If not, I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll probably go live again. I think we'll get a DFS resolution tomorrow, whether it's with the Lakers or not. So I will be live to talk about that. But appreciate you all, and I will talk to you all very soon.